Hi, I'm Casey, and today I really don't know what I'm doing. We're joined today by Matilda because I need something to fidget with today. This is a last minute video. The video I had planned originally, we're having to push back another week or so because my husband and I have been really busy and we just don't have time to film that. So instead, we're going to do 2022 reading goals. Yeah, exciting. I know that most people post this kind of content at the very end of the year or the very beginning of the year, and I just didn't do that. I wasn't interested in posting this kind of video at the beginning of the year, but it's something that I think will be fun to talk about now that I've done this for a little while and I'm a little bit more comfortable just sitting here talking at my phone for 40 minutes at a time. So here we go. We're gonna discuss some reading goals. The first goal that I want to talk to you about is I want to read more nonfiction this year. I believe I read a whopping one nonfiction book last year, which was a memoir, and I want to up that number. I think that's particularly bad for me, and last year was, a very strange reading year, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But I really just don't engage or pick up a lot of nonfiction, and I really should. I should really push myself more, and not just should, but I want to. I want to push myself more. I want to read more things that are interesting to me, that sound fun to me, that are a variety of nonfiction styles. I enjoy Mary Roach quite a bit. I've enjoyed every book I've read of hers. I know my husband and I are going to be reading Fuzz together soon. We might even be doing that for book club. Even though I enjoy Mary Roach, she's got a very particular style. And while I love that style, I want to read more things other than just kind of funny, thorough explorations of a topic. I want to read more memoirs, like Rocket Boys by Homer Hickam Jr. This has been on my desk for a really long time now. I started trying to read this a couple years ago, and I got maybe a third of the way through, and I just stopped. I can't remember why. But I would love to get this off of my shelves. I would love to, not off of my shelves, I would love to get this off of my desk. I would love to have finally added this somewhere else in my house to the collection of books we have. And I think the first third was really interesting. I think it'll continue to be interesting. I would love to read really good, enjoyable narrative nonfiction, like Radium Girls. I'm pretty sure this is more narrative style nonfiction. This is another one that I picked up, and I didn't get nearly as far in this one. I think I only made it about 20 pages and I sat it down. But I was trying to read this at a weird time, and that was my fault. So would love to give this a full chance to really wow me and really, teach me something about this topic. I would love to push myself and read more science-based nonfiction, like Spying on Whales. This in particular is what I'm really interested in reading more of. This and the next book I'm going to talk about. I really want to read more science-based nonfiction, and I really want to read more about topics that I find interesting. I do find whales fascinating. I would love to really dig into this and to learn more about the history and the biology of whales and anything like this that I find really interesting, or just kind of even tangentially interesting. It can often be the most fascinating books, and I want to read more things like this. And because I am a morbid bitch, I would love to read more books about death and the culture and the rituals of death around the world, like From Here to Eternity by Caitlin Doughty. I want to read more morbid nonfiction. My favorite Mary Roach book is Stiff, which is about dead people and decomposition and funerary practices in the United States primarily. I want to read more things that really kind of grab me by my interest. I have several books that I have on my Goodreads that I want to get around to that deal with topics like this. And I think it would just be good for me. And not only is it something that I think would be good for me, it's something I really want to push myself to do. There have been a lot of times in my reading journey where I've really had to focus on reading what I could when I could. And I'm at a place right now where I really want to push myself a little bit more. I don't want to just grab the thing that interests me, which is primarily going to be horror or science fiction, right? I want to push myself more to read things that I wouldn't necessarily pick up, but that I still have an interest in. And I want to push myself to enjoy more and reach out more in the nonfiction genre. The next goal I have is I really just kind of want to read what I want. Now that might seem like kind of a weird next point when I've just been talking about pushing myself to read things that I wouldn't necessarily pick up, but let me explain here. I'm very much a mood reader. As much as I can make a TBR or, a pile of books that I'm going to pick from, it's really gotta be something that I'm interested in, right, for me to pick up. There are going to be a lot of things that I pick up throughout the month that I had absolutely no intention of picking up because I saw it and I went, ooh, that one. My gut tells me I should read that one right now. And that's what I kind of want to stick to. I want to push myself in a lot of ways, but I also want to make a point to not just grab something because it's easy. At the end of last year, I was listening to a lot of shorter audiobooks because I was basically competing with myself for no real reason of like, oh my god, let's see if we can push past 70 books. No, let's see if we can push past 90 books. And I listened to so many short audiobooks and read so many of the shorter books off of my shelves. And it's something that I don't necessarily regret, but I don't think it really served a purpose for me except to bump up the number at the end of the year. It was the kind of thing that I did grab primarily audiobooks I would have been interested in otherwise, but it's not the time I wanted to read them. And I would much rather pick up a book that I'm really interested in, that I'm like, oh my god, yes, this is what I want to read right now, that ends up being a 1 or a 2 star, rather than picking something up because I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to read this because for whatever reason, except for my own personal interest, and it be a 3 star, because that's so much less memorable to me. When I think back on a lot of the audiobooks that I listened to at the end of last year, I can't really remember most of them unless they were like really outstanding. And I want to be able to look back on my year and think, oh yeah, I read this and I hated it, or oh yeah, I read this and it was all right, but I know who I'm going to recommend this to and I know that people will love this. I would much rather have that experience, and I get more of that experience when I purposely engage with books that I'm actively interested in. My next goal is directly going to piggyback off of what I was just talking about, and I don't want to give a shit about numbers this year. I don't want to give a shit about the number of hours I've listened to, about the number of pages I've read, about the number of books I've read. I typically don't care about that. I did it at the end of last year just to push myself more, and it didn't really work for me. I hated it. There's something I've noticed a lot on, like, particularly Book Talk, but I think it can also happen on BookTube a little bit, is that people really get this sort of like, oh my god, I didn't read as much as someone else. And this has more to do with people interacting with this media versus the people making this kind of content, is people feeling like they're not reading enough because they don't consume media as quickly as some of these people online do. And I don't think that matters. I think you should read at the pace that you want, and if you want to read, let's say something silly like 400, 500 books in a year, fucking go for it, right? Do what you want. But if you can only manage 10 books in a year, that's 10 more than you might have read otherwise. You should be really excited for it. And I kind of fell into that trap last year of, for silly reasons, really pushing myself to read more than I necessarily wanted to. And that was a bad time for me to do that. And I really want to make a point of picking stuff up when I want to and enjoying it, because that's how I'm going to end up reading more, is if I'm like engaged in a book, even if I hate it, I'll go through it in a couple of days. I just don't think numbers fucking matter, to be pretty blunt about it. You should read what you want, when you want, and I say you, but I'm really talking about me. I'm not trying to tell anyone how to live their life and how to engage in a hobby. But that's something that I really need to remember, is that I need to read it when I want, and I need to read what I want. And if what I want to read is just about pushing myself and pushing my boundaries and pushing my genres a little, that's still reading it because I want to, not just because, oh, it's a quick read and I can just bump up my numbers a bit. The next goal I want to talk about is reading bigger books and longer books. Again, at the end of last year, I was really trying to listen to audiobooks and read books that were really short because I was concerned about getting that number up, about the number of pages, number of hours, number of books total that I had read. And I missed out on a lot of books that I wanted to read because I was like, no, I can't read a 700-page novel and still feel like I'm pushing myself further with trying to get higher numbers, right? And I really want to just read longer books. I love longer books. I really enjoy them. I know that some people can find them tedious and long, and some of them are. Please don't get me wrong. Especially as a fan of Stephen King, some of his longer work is exceedingly tedious and just tiresome to read at the length it is. But I really enjoy long books. 2 of the books that I have read this year that were longer, I've really enjoyed. And there are some on my shelves that I still haven't got around to that I'm really looking forward to getting around to this year and making a point of being like, no, I don't care if I only read 4 books this month. If I can knock out, something huge, I'll feel really good and I'll really enjoy it. And then my last goal, which is a continuous goal for me, is to diversify my shelves more. I want to make a point to continue to not just purchase from white cis authors. I want to seek out more own voices. I want to seek out more diverse literature to add to my library, to help me be a better person. And it's something that's ongoing. It's something I noticed probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, probably around the time I started watching BookTube content, was that my bookshelves were not very diverse. I had a lot of white authors, and in particular, I had a lot of white male authors. And I was sort of shocked when I realized I didn't realize just how monochromatic my shelves were in terms of authors. And it was upsetting to me. And it's something that I wanted to fix, and it's something I want to always fix. It's something that I try to look at when I make a TBR for the month, is I pick out the books that I think I'm going to read and I think that I'm going to have strong interest in, and then I try to look at it and be like, oh my god, have you included diverse authors or diverse stories in this TBR? And shamefully, there are times where I haven't. And I try to fix that, and I try to go, okay, we're going to remove some of these because, you'll get around to them when you get around to them, but we need to include more. And it's something that I try to do in my book shopping as well. I want to make a point of going to a bookstore because I very rarely go to a bookstore for just one book. And if I'm going for a specific book, it's like, okay, let's go for that book. And then we have to pick something that maybe that you're definitely interested in, but that you didn't think you were going to pick up today. And it's something that I think is really important for me as a reader, is to be mindful of that and to be actively diversifying my shelves as much as I can and diversifying my reading as much as I can. And it's a goal I want to continue, not just this year, but into the future, because it's important. As as a white person with a lot of privilege, I need to be using that, and I need to be constantly educating myself. And that's what I really want to do. And one of the points I want to talk about on this as well is that I don't want to just include trauma from POC authors, and specifically from Black authors, right? I think I briefly talked about this in my February wrap-up of including You Should See Me in a Crown into my reading that month, because I wanted to specifically have a book that centered around Black joy and not just Black trauma. And that's something I want to make a point of for all people of color that I read from. I think it's easy to just fall into the trap of reading about trauma and reading about harm and hurt from people, and it's important to include those books in your reading. But it's also just as important to read about everyone's joy and people's culture and their happiness. And that was something that I got checked on by BookTube, by a more diverse BookTube, is I know it's Black History Month, but you need to include Black joy, because Black people don't just live in trauma. And I went, you're fucking right, and I should have done better, and I need to do better going forward. And it's something I do want to do going forward. It's something I think is important, and I think it's something that is so beneficial. And I want to use my reading to help uplift authors and help uplift their happiness and these characters' happiness. And I know that might sound a little silly just to talk about the characters' happiness, but I think it's important, right? Especially as someone who reads a lot of horror and a lot of darker fiction. If I'm going to include some like really happy, fluffy books in my reading, I need to make a point to make sure that they are diverse stories and diverse joys being told. So that got a little heavy at the end, and I don't know what to say now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a beautiful day wherever you are. And if you're watching this and you feel like commenting, please tell me some of your reading goals, or give me some recommendations for the various reading goals that I have. I guess I will see you the next time I film one of these. But Matilda says goodbye and have a lovely day. And thank you for joining us, Matilda. You offered nothing in the way of your opinions, but that's okay. You were here to be pretty. Okay, don't watch this. Bye.